Welcome back to East Wing Woodworking. In today's episode, we're going to do something a bit different. We're going to take this next project on the road to another shop, one that's bigger, more capable, and has the capacity to help me get this job done. So stick around, this should be fun. East Wing Woodworking. Today, we're going to produce a fairly large number of these catch-all trays for a new client that's going to give them away at his organization's annual charity golf tournament. The place where we're taking this project is West Coast Makery, located in Mission Viejo, California, and owned and operated by my good friend Bob. Once we get inside, I'll explain to you how we set this whole thing up. With the cost of walnut being so expensive, we needed to come up with a way to produce each tray with the least amount of waste. So our first thought was to lay out each board on the CNC and use the software to nest out each tray, positioning them really close together. The next question became, how do we hold down each tray as they're being cut out? Do we use double-sided tape and CA glue, or do we cut tabs to hold each tray in place? We first tried creating tabs, and that worked out. However, when each tray was complete, removing the tabs created burn marks on the edges that was hard to remove. In addition, this method didn't solve our need to minimize waste. Using the tape CA glue method worked out well, both from a hold down and minimizing waste perspective. However, we found it was going to take a massive amount of time setting up each board to be cut. Plus, there's additional time needed to clean up each piece after they've been cut. So what's the solution? Well, lucky for us, my shop buddy's a genius, and his CNC has a built-in vacuum table. Now, Bob had this idea of creating a fixture that would allow the vacuum to hold down a pre-cut blank, thus giving the necessary hold-down capability. Now, this idea allowed us to make a pre-cut blanks to a size that was just about 3/8 of an inch larger than a finished tray. Now, the 3/8 represents a diameter of the cutting bit, so the only waste we produced was just sawdust. Now, sure, we have to spend some time milling and cutting each board to create the blanks, but in the grand scheme of things, this extra effort was well worth it. Now, in addition, the benefit was maximizing our time. This process allowed us to pop off each of the finished trays while the CNC was cutting new ones and replace them with new blanks for when the CNC comes back around. Now, I know that some of you guys are probably going to ask this question in the comments. The bit we're using is an amount of 3/8 inch downcut spiral bit running at 150 inches a minute. Now, the finished trays are 5 inches by 7 inches by 1 inch thick, and the tray pocket is 0.6 inches deep. Now, we set the program to cut the inside pocket in 3 passes, and the outside cut was completed in about 6 passes. We wanted to be a bit conservative on the depth of each of the passes of the outside cut because we thought that the amount of torque this machine would produce could pop the tray off the vacuum table.
Hi everybody, I'm Bob. I'm Ed's friend, and Ed came to me and he says, hey, we got this fundraiser coming up and we wanted to make these trays for a golf tournament. How would you go about it? And you know, at first we were thinking the most important part of it was how we're going to hold this stuff down. And you know, holding down parts is always, certainly small parts, has always been a big hurdle. I've been experimenting and always interested with vacuum fixtures, and that's what we did here. We toyed with a lot of different things because it's just very difficult to get something that size to get locked on tight. And so we came up with, we talked to these people at All Star. They're in California and they just specialize in all different kinds of gasketing. And Dan over there was great. And I had seen them at trade shows years past and just kind of walked by them, but this last time in Las Vegas I actually picked up a couple sample rolls that they had of this adhesive gasket material. It's only a 1/16 of an inch thick, and it's just tape, and you just basically put it around where you want the vacuum, and you put the holes in, and you put this on. When you turn the vacuum on, boom, it stays. So we used regular MDF, and we wrote the file for the part that we wanted to cut, and then from that we did an outline of where the blank would have to go so that we wouldn't undercut the blank. And then we put some vacuum holes in it, we put a pot around it, and we arrayed it down 9 parts, and We put all you got to do is line the blank up so that it covers up we put a little black line on here, and we went all the way down here, and you can see from the video, it just started here with a 3/8 inch pocketed out, cut the trim, went to the next one. We were popping them out every 2.5 minutes. Now, granted, this is a big machine, and not everybody's going to have one of these, so it's not really fair to compare this with, the ones that everybody gets started with, but they do make smaller units that you can get a pad for the top of your hobbyist CNC that's like 24 by 24, and you get a small motor, and it does a great job. Not to have to hold something down, it's super clean. We cut the blanks so that they only had like an 1/8 inch overhang, so we didn't even have any splintering. Everything went up into the dust collection.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
It was super clean.
Really well. We were able to actually crank out all 150 pieces in a relatively quick amount of time.
We timed them 2.5 minutes a piece, and this one would get done. That one, and then you could pop these off and put the new one on. Pop it off, put the new one on, and then when it's done there, it would come back and start here again. So it was running all the time. And the beautiful thing about this is, certainly, it's doing it, and while we take these off and it's cutting the rest, you're sanding. We put the edge on it here. We actually did that on the router table. It just was easier than having to do a tool change for each set of 9. So it was really a great experiment, and it worked out very well, and it opens a whole new world to what as far as hold down, which has always been a big hurdle ever since I've been using machines, is just how do you hold those small parts down. So
this worked out good.
Yeah, if we're doing the next job I'm doing, it's going to be a small flip-flop that's actually a flipped operation. So that'll be even more interesting, and it's a smaller part than that. So I'm anxious to see how well it will hold it down. But as far as this, I mean, you couldn't take these off. These things were just on there.
Oh, that were like glue. We had to use we actually had to use a chisel to just pop them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you break the seal, they come off. But I mean, you can imagine the torque all the way around with a 3/8 inch bit. It didn't move.
Yeah, it was perfect.
I think out of 250, we lost 1.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad loss rate.
Well, cool. Well, thanks, Bob. Let's get started at the miter saw. We'll cut each blank to the dimensions of 7 3/8 by 5 3/8.
I'm eyeballing it. Oh, but see, look where that is.
Like no waste. That's what's awesome about this setup.
How's that depth work here?
If you look closely, we drew guidelines on the fixture. Now we use this as a guide when placing each blank. Now this ensures that we'll maximize the accuracy of each cut. We purposely set the CNC machine to leave just an onion-sized thick amount of material on the outside cut to ensure the machine didn't cut into our fixture. So here I am taking the finished trays over to the belt sanding station to remove the excess wood. This is the second stage of our operation. The third phase of our operation is at the router table. We're going to use this 45-degree chamfer bit to cut a nice profile on the outside edge of each tray. The fourth phase of the operation is to etch the logo for the golf tournament. For this, we're going to use a 100-watt CO2 laser.
Yeah. Well, actually, we can do a tray, you know.
And just like the first operation where we had to create a jig for the vacuum table, here we'll need to create a jig that will allow us to place a finished tray in the exact location at the right distance from the laser to create a perfect image. Now the jig is going to also allow us to remove the finished tray and easily replace it with the next one, not causing us to have to reconfigure the laser.
It's going to get glued onto this. Yeah. I hope that'll make it. This is round one.
As you can see here, the jig allows us to insert the tray without us having to adjust the height of the laser. This jig made such a difference that we were able to complete about 24 trays in an hour. On to sanding. Not exactly anyone's favorite thing to do, and it took the two of us a considerable amount of time to get through all of these trays. Here we are at the tail end of the project, and Bob had to make another jig to get us through the finishing phase. We decided to use mineral oil for the finish. So we will use the screen to allow the excess finishing oil to drip into a plastic container. Bob came up with this idea of making a frame around the piece of metal screen to make it rigid, so it won't sag when we place the trays on top of it.
Perfect.
While you watch me put the finish on these trays, allow me a moment to share how this project came to be. I was contacted by the president of the Central Ohio chapter of Folds of Honor. Now, Folds of Honor is a nonprofit organization that provides educational scholarships to the spouses and children of America's fallen and disabled service members and first responders. If you'd like to learn more about Folds of Honor and or make a donation, I've provided links in the description below. The organization wanted to do something special for their donors who participated in the golf tournament, and they thought these walnut catch-all trays with the Patriot at Heatherwood logo engraved in them would make a great gift. I knew I could make these trays, but the only way I would have been able to get them out in time for the event meant that I was going to need access to equipment that had mass production capabilities. So I reached out to Bob at West Coast Makery to see if he could help, and luckily for me, he was more than happy to lend a hand. We were able to get the order out in plenty of time, and I'm super happy about how everything turned out. Now, thanks again for everyone for tuning in. Now, I know it's been a while since I posted any new content, but stay tuned. 2025 promises to be a big year for this channel, and I'm hoping you all stick around. Now, please hit that like button and subscribe. See you next time on East Wing Woodworking.